Hi, I'm Brendan MacNeill. I shoot people and places, food and drink for editorial and advertising clients. When Nikki asked me to contribute to this video series, I instantly said yes, but I hadn't figured out with the fact that I'd lost access to my magazines because of a recent hasty office move. However, I hugely believe in always having a plan B. And I found that plan B sitting here on a shelf in my house. Here you go, plan B. Okay, so my plan B for Nikki was a copy of Nova, the relaunch issue from June 2000 at all of £1.50. Wow. And I'm looking at it from the perspective of a photographer because I think there's a few things that have changed in that 20 years, and I just thought we might like to go through this. Nova, of course, was the magazine that every teenage boy picked up and surreptitiously looked through the fashion and underwear advertising pages. So here we have an ad making huge reference to men's urinals and habits in men's urinals, reference to Helmut Newton there. It's from Harvey Nicks, and of course this isn't just a reference to Helmut. It is a reference to part of a male anatomy. The spread goes on. So 3 double-page spreads, quite a bit of money spent on advertising in those days. And interestingly, it finishes on a left page with the next story starting on the right page. Interesting page marks being used, by the way. I love the headline of 90 degrees. This is an interview, 100 women interviewed. They did a survey in 1969, similar survey, so 10 years later, 30 years later, here's a similar one, and it goes on again to use the right angle. Go on here to some really nice strong black and white photography. This is again now more black and white here. Now this is 20 years ago. Digital was only starting to make an appearance, so there would have still been lots of black and white used. I think it's used quite nicely. So not everything has to be in colour, folks. Go on here to about the only reference in the whole magazine that I could see to anything online, anything got to do with the internet. Here's a subscription form for it. Again, nothing here about going online. You have to put the thing in the post. Interestingly, I looked at the URL here and it's for sale, so clearly something didn't go right with that branding. We come to a fashion spread. Okay, so I'm not a fashion photographer. I've done a couple of spreads in my time. I used to assist in some rental studios in London, so there were fashion photographers coming in to London for the day, for 2 days, and they were photographing for any and every kind of fashion magazine. But what I find interesting is that this is about being part of the setting. It's about being in it, living the setting. Whereas a lot of fashion spreads these days are about flying into a place and being a tourist in the place. And I just think it's a very subtle shift, but I think it's quite an important shift that's happened over the 20 years since this was shot. I don't know, but you know, I'm only a photographer, so what the hell do I know? Now here's an interesting, very early Photoshop. I'm imagining it's Photoshop. photographic backgrounds and then a drawn illustration placed on top. Here's a Terry Richardson spread. Again, what's you don't see that many fashion spreads that are done against a plain grey backdrop anymore. So just a bit of a time warp. And incidentally, Terry's World, I'm told, is the most thumbed book in Waterstones in its day. And again, an interesting tight framing, which again is something that's not too familiar with happening these days, and just interesting lighting effects, and you know, a very heavy fan or blow dryer, and look, even a filling or two showing. And now here's something slightly controversial, but my point being, number one, you won't see a image like that again these days, but this is a story about where you are where you eat, and so they're showing foodstuffs from various different places, and this of course looks as though it's been shot in a studio, whereas in this day and age it would be shot with available light, almost certainly with available light, or certainly to mimic available light. Here though, you've got a very obvious big box up above the set, and nice graphic image there. And finally, we have a story on Harlem, and again, just to go back to this thing that we don't see an awful lot of anymore, it's just great black and white photography. And so that's my find, that's my contribution. Oh yes, this plastic is getting to be this plastic is just getting to be a little annoying. But there you go. Nova Collector's Edition, June 2000.